Okay, hi everyone, good evening. Our group did Baby Boomers. Our group consists of me, Hayden, Nate, and Linda. And our chosen transformational leader is Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, the whole Walt Disney Company, if you don't know. We selected him because he led Disney through one of the most complex media transformations that has happened in the 21st century. Disney, of course, we know for films and everything, but when you think about Disney and all of its assets, and you think about the transition they've made from ABC, Freeform, ESPN to this now like Disney plus Hulu new media landscape, he is such a transformational leader in the way that he was able to execute that, and a lot of it exemplifies a lot of baby boomer ideals. He focuses on long-term strategy, institutional loyalty, and relationship focus with how he handles himself as a leader. And so I'm going to walk us through a little bit about his leadership background and his leadership style. So starting at the beginning, he was hired at ABC in 1974. That's where he began his career with, at the time, just ABC, but what would eventually become the entire Disney Corporation. He worked in media operations and helped a lot with their corporate structure. He follows the traditional baby boomer sort of lifespan, where he started at one company as a pretty young adult and has maintained with that company over time, versus this new young ideal of like hop to a different company, gain all these different experiences, work in all these fields. He's very like media centered, Disney centered, or like what would become Disney centered. He eventually became president of ABC, and then ABC was purchased by Disney in 1996, which is how he became COO of the Disney company. And there, even when you just think about that logistically, like you became the COO of the company who acquired you, that's a pretty big leadership change. It also requires a lot of relationship management, which is something he definitely specialized in. In 2005, he then jumps to becoming the CEO of Disney, and there he starts to make what we now know as like Disney for our generation. So if you think about sort of like Disney in this era, kind of think exclusively like movies and the two theme parks, versus this is when Disney becomes what it is now and the media powerhouse it is now. So like it says, he acquired Pixar in 2006, Marvel in 2009, and Lucasfilm in 2012. He wanted to focus on them expanding their fan base past like your typical sort of like Disney fan base of these cartoon movies like Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid. And he wanted to do it by taking the biggest risk possible. All of these acquisitions cost Disney quite a lot of money and were a pretty big risk. Pixar was the least risk because they bought them right after Toy Story had just come out. And so they were like this hot new company making these cool kids movies. Marvel had sold the rights to Spider-Man. Literally all they had left was the license to Iron Man and Thor. They'd sold the rights to the Hulk, and so they kind of bought this company that was like definitely trending downward, knowing that they could transform it into like a Disney brand. And same with Lucasfilm. It was purchased in 2012, obviously long after the Star Wars films had been done coming out. And one thing that he really quotes himself even saying is this creativity first strategy. Disney is such a creative company that he didn't want to try and force these creative teams under him to fit his like business background. He wanted them to lead with creativity and like follow that passion first and let that guide them as a company, which I think is very unique and also a great example of how you adapt your leadership style to your company. Then in 2016 is when they make their big digital pivot. They launched Disney Plus in 2019, which then made Netflix a new competitor for the company, because previously Disney was getting money from licensing their movies out to streaming platforms or TV networks, and now Disney was instead investing in their own movies and films and then also pocketing that licensing money as well as obviously money from subscription services. They then acquired 21st Century Fox in 2019, and this is when they start to make that big shift that I think, like from here to here, he was definitely considered a wonderful CEO. This is where he kind of cemented himself as transformational, because he was able to take this legacy company that was known for very specific things and transform it into what it is now, of literally a media conglomerate that controls like a majority of the media we consume. It was a very changing landscape, obviously going from being a production company to a streaming company. And you can think about all the companies that definitely followed in Disney's footsteps. Like you have HBO Max now, you have Paramount Plus now. All these companies saw how well it worked and how big of a bet he was willing to take on his company, and Disney has now received the profits. He then steps down as CEO in 2020, and then again, kind of where he cements himself as a baby boomer legend when the company started to fail miserably in 2022. All of these ideas weren't working. The new CEO was putting money in all the wrong places. He came back as CEO in 2022 to bring stability back to the company, sort of reinstate those ideas he had here of like creativity first, let's focus on the stories, let's focus on what we do well as a company. And he bought Hulu in 2025. He made more like structured plans for succession, saying like, okay, we buy Hulu, what's our next steps? Versus here, I feel like he was his own leader. There was no plan outside of his head, versus now that plan exists on paper and exists as more of a timeline the company can follow for future success. And his big thing, he wrote an autobiography, is progress with stabilization. If he wants to keep Disney constantly picking the newest thing to take a risk on, but in a way that doesn't put the company at risk anymore. And so this translates into some of his leadership styles. Again, he has an autobiography that's called The Ride of a Lifetime, sort of a play on words with what Disney's known for, obviously rides with Disneyland. And he, even in his own words, exemplifies these 4 qualities as what has made him a great leader. His number one, he says, is optimism. He thinks of the glass half full always. He sees challenges as an opportunity to make the company better versus a setback. Kind of like, for example, COVID. Like, obviously massive challenge, but you have this company that has so many different assets. He was like, yes, we have to close our parks, but this is a time that we could invest in our streaming platform. Now that people are watching films at home, how can we develop that to be better? He sees it as ways to really make your company very dynamic. He then says that courage is directly linked to that optimism, again with that risk-reward idea he's been having this whole time of how can I bet on myself and bet on my company. He loves the idea of looking at those long-term outcomes, and a really good example of where he was courageous is the Marvel bet. He bought a company that basically was making no money and has turned it into what it is now with the highest grossing movies of all time. They're building an extension of theme parks based on it. He like entirely transformed not only the Marvel brand, but then also expanded the Disney catalog to include an entire new population of fans. He then says that his decisiveness translates from that courage, that he thinks you need to make timely, clear decisions, and that acting fast is an asset to a company. So no dilly-dallying, no wondering, is this gonna be the right move or not? If you feel it in your gut, do it. And then just kind of like follow that internal instinct. And then lastly, I feel like I've mentioned it quite a lot, and given the company it makes sense, is that creativity. He thinks that a company like Disney is driven on storytelling and the creative process. And as long as you sort of keep that at the forefront of not only like the organization, but also its leaders, you kind of enable it to keep making these excellent decisions and making these revolutionary choices as a company. Now I will pass it to Linda, hypothetically, for strategic challenges. Can I sit down? Bob Iger has taken a 3-pronged approach to strengthen the Walt Disney Company across streaming, experiences, and sports. With the launch of Disney Plus in 2019, Iger positioned Disney as a unique player in the market without a direct peer. Sorry, the Grammarly thing is blocked. But competing broadly with platforms like Nike and Warner Brothers Discovery. While stock performances peaked in 2021 and have since stabilized, Disney continues to focus on profitability and subscriber growth. At the same time, its experiences division, which includes theme parks and cruise lines, remains a major revenue driver, with operating income rising 39% year over year in Q4, despite a slight 1% dip in domestic park attendance and increasing competition with Comcast's Epic Universe in Florida. In sports, Disney leverages its 80% ownership of ESPN to stay competitive against tech giants like Amazon and YouTube TV, highlighted by its aggressive investment in NBA rights with a 73% increase for the 2025 to 2026 season. Together, these strategies reflect Iger's focus on diversified growth, premium content, and long-term market positioning. In the early 2000s, Bob Iger began shaping a long-term strategy that would transform the Walt Disney Company from its traditional media powerhouse into a dominant force in the digital and streaming era. Recognizing the gradual decline of cable television and the growing importance of digital distribution, Iger prioritized acquiring high-quality intellectual property that would drive across multiple platforms. His leadership decisions were not immediately about streaming itself, but about a content ecosystem strong enough to support it. This vision led to major acquisitions such as Pixar, Marvel Entertainment, and Lucasfilm, each bringing globally recognized franchises that would later become foundational to Disney's streaming services. As consumer benefit shifted toward on-demand viewing in the 2010s, Iger leveraged these earlier mergers to launch Disney Plus in 2019. By consolidating Disney's vast library of acquired content, the company was able to compete directly with platforms like Netflix and Amazon. Iger's strategic foresight ensured that Disney was not only prepared for the streaming revolution, but positioned to lead it. His merger-driven approach illustrates how long-term investment in intellectual property and vertical integration can cause sustainable competitive advantage in increasingly digital media landscapes. Bob Iger returned to the Walt Disney Company in 2022 to stabilize the company during a period of strategic and financial uncertainty. Following leadership challenges from under his successor, Disney faced declining stock values, streaming losses, and concerns about overall direction. Iger was brought back to restore investor confidence, refocus the company's strategy, particularly in streaming profitability, and realign Disney's creative and operational priorities for long-term growth. And then we have a video, which I'm not sure how to play it from the clicker, but could I just do it off the computer?
Yeah. Should be able to.
This is a quick video of Iger speaking to Time magazine addressing the younger generation about having business core values that will stand the test of time. From their success with Snow White in 1937 to Zootopia 2 this past year, the core values have remained unchanged.
I don't think expect to stay in the same company for their entire lives or their entire career. I'm not sure that I knew what to expect when I started out either, though. I was extremely fortunate in that I started working at a company and in a business that experienced phenomenal growth and expansion over the course of really the 5 decades that I worked in it. If you study great brands over time and you try to figure out why some companies stand the test of time and remain relevant, you would quickly conclude that most companies that go away, that fade away because they've abandoned the core values that created the company and the values in the first place. In the interest of staying relevant, they distance themselves from the very essence of what they were when they began. There is a way to completely adhere to those same values, provided they're the right values, but to present them to the world, to your customers, and to your employees in much more relevant ways.
Okay, so that was in his own words, kind of a summary of what both Linda and I covered, and now I'm going to pass it to Hayden, who's going to go over the financials.
Alright, so I did mine on the financials for revenue, EBITDA, and stocks. And I chose to go compare to Comcast, Netflix, and Warner Brothers. Comcast kind of seems to dominate, to be honest, but I just figured I'd throw them in there because they can do with television as well, broadband, everything really. But Disney, you can see here, one is 2020, 2021, 22, so on. He came in 2020, and you can see the massive change in Disney once he got here. And she had mentioned how he brought like stability, sorry, and just I don't know why I'm shaking. Yeah, stability and just looking for growth. After they had some pretty rough years prior. You can go. Oh wait, my bad. Here's the EBITDA. This is like the best look at to see how a company is doing. It's like their actual performance, in my opinion, versus like stocks. Because you'll see on the next page, they actually went down in stocks once he took over, but that didn't show what they actually were doing. Once again, same comparisons with the companies. You have Disney, constant growth, and Comcast doing their thing. And the others, you get to see that they go up and down. What Disney has done, especially under Bob Iger, is he was just dependable, made the company constantly grow, nothing crazy, but continual year over year. Yeah, he had a 2.5 EBITDA expansion since 2020. Yes, and that's all I had to do with. So I feel like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm about to faint right now. So here's the stock price performance. I actually feel like I'm about to faint. I'm not gonna lie. Like actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
man.
I'm so serious.
I got you.
Oh, okay.
Water?
Yeah, I think I need to drink water. I'm about to figure it out.
Who passes
That's
water?
crazy. I got it right here. I'm sorry. Ooh, that ain't like crazy. Yeah, it's just stock price performance. Once again, Disney, Netflix, Comcast. As I said, they were higher stock price during 2020, 2021. Either came in at 22. It fell, but like I said, that doesn't show truly how well they were doing. Once he took it back over, he brought dependability, stability, and yeah, just great financials. Started purchasing things such as they mentioned Hulu later on, ESPN. Netflix is their biggest competitor, and God, I'm
Cool.
like sick right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, transition through.
Yeah, that
Transition
is-
to the next
that
person.
is-
That's fine.
that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna walk outside because yeah. Sorry. Yeah, there you go.
Nate.
Oh,
Okay, so I suppose it's my turn now. And so I've been directed to fill in the shoes of a coach. Now, I'm not exactly one who has $1 billion, $1 million, or $100,000, maybe 10,000, but that's not mine, it's my parents and grant money, so it doesn't count. But the point is, still, theoretically, if I were, and I had to coach you or Bob Iger or someone else in this sort of department, one of the key things sort of to take away from this whole ordeal and this PowerPoint, this presentation, is to just simply be direct, transparent, and just be upfront about everything. In the modern day, everything has to come down to a meta, and because of a meta, basically number crunching, right? So in this number crunching, or just telling people, hey, this is what's happening, this is what we gotta do to fix it, this is what it takes. So for the first part, succession transparency, well, obviously you have to be able to make sure that the CEO or the next CEO actually knows what type of shoes they have to fill, and be able to gauge the depth of the job that they're expected to take on. So, and obviously, one of the key elements to help with this is using milestones. Milestones that help because you can, if your ship's sinking, at least you can say, hey, at least we made it to the island, we're not in the middle of the ocean. Open-ended language doesn't really help the ship sinking, but how bad is it sinking, and reducing market uncertainty, that can be a matter of, confidence, right? Confidence in yourself, confidence with investors, confidence with the stakeholders, and overall, the better your future looks, the more people will want to actually give you a chance. Then directness with your talent. The goal with something like Disney or any sort of company that prides itself on creativity is to have a little bit of integrity, maintain your creative freedom, but still keep an eye on the prize with the numbers. Okay, you have to communicate budget limits early. You have to use data to justify controls, such as like charts, charts, graphs, all that stuff. A suit's best friend, essentially, and efficiency over its success. Work smarter, not harder. And lastly, digital agility. Digital agility is basically the ability to look at the people below you, not in a demeaning way, but just more specifically, the people that build the pyramids, essentially. In the case of Iger, BabyBoomer, his way of doing things is different from our ways of doing things. We like to use tech. He does it more old-fashioned. We're sort of fail fast, but iterate fast to make up for our mistakes. So you have to be clever and on your feet. And then kind of like hustlers, right? But minus the whole getting in debt thing. You have to connect with millennials and your Gen Z workforce. A key way to help with this is using their words, their vocabulary, their lingo. Just try not to go too hard on it. None of that adulting stuff. People recently actually really don't like millennial language or humor. So you gotta be careful. You don't want people to think you're a man-child. And then, obviously, lastly, try to keep Disney with it by positioning them as a modern media tech company. That they're willing to use the newest tech to stay on top of their competition and to not be totally set in their ways. And that's it on my end and for the presentation as a whole.
Questions? Oh, you can sit down. Or yeah,
No,
yeah,
no.
Blade's out there, perfect.